Don't get mad, get media. MadPod. Rare celebrity interviews, indie music, MadPod.com. Your global audio internet connection. Coming up on MadPod.com.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Jay Donnelly with you, MadPod.com, and coming up on the next MadPod, which is now, exclusive interview with Deborah Harry from Blondie. That's Nicky, keep it down back there. That's right, Shadow's really gone out of his way this time. Deborah Harry, Blondie, here on MadPod.com. All right, Nick.
Born in Miami and joining us live coast to coast from New York City, singer-songwriter and founding member of the new wave rock group Blondie, the legendary Deborah Harry joins us. Deborah, a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Shadow. How are you doing?
I'm well, and you?
Very well.
Firstly, let's talk about your latest project, Necessary Evil, your first solo album since Depravation back in 1993, over 14 years ago. Why so long in between albums? Tell us about the CD, Deborah.
Well, I guess, time flies when you're having fun, as they say. I guess that's no excuse for not making another solo record, but I guess I got busy. I was doing a lot of touring with Blondie, and we did a couple of Blondie albums in between, so I guess that's the answer to that half of the question. What was the other half?
You can tell us about the project.
Oh, I can tell you about the album?
Sure.
Well, it's a collection of songs that I recorded when I was off the road, that, at various times. It's spread out over about a year and a half, so I sort of had the luxury of recording things at a very relaxed pace. I didn't have a deadline or anything like that. I just sort of, whenever I had an idea, I would go into the studio and work with my friends and producers, Super Buddha, and sort of built up a little body of material. And then, I played it for my manager, and he thought that maybe it was time to put out a solo collection, which, as you say, I haven't done for quite a long time.
Now, you've worked with the Jazz Passengers. Is there a particular type of voice that's suited to both jazz and your rock material, Deborah?
I don't really know. For me, as a singer, I know that the styles of the music are radically different, and mostly it's about time signature. But as a singer, for what I do, it's sort of like telling a story to music. And, sort of painting a picture with words. So for me, it's almost the same thing with a different feel. And, I've always really liked jazz. I've always admired the jazz players. And so it sort of seemed like a golden opportunity for me to try something a little bit different.
When you're as closely associated with a body of music as you and Blondie are, is there a compulsion to write in that vein or to veer away from it, such as Necessary Evil?
Well, I don't know if it's that much different. I think that what's different, the difference is basically the sound of the musicians when they get together. That Blondie sound is the combination of the, original four players and their styles and their instruments, and that is really what makes the sound of a band. Is the players, as a unit. I think if I were to perform Blondie songs with other musicians, it could sound like Smashing Pumpkins doing Blondie songs.
Now, as you write, is it harder to surprise people who essentially have access to every note and every song ever made anywhere these days?
Is it make it any very difficult? Is that what you said?
Yes, is it harder to surprise people?
Oh, I suppose. Everybody has so much information. It is a double-edged sword, isn't it? That everybody has access to everything. But then again, it sort of evens out the playing field as far as, age discrimination goes. It doesn't really apply so much anymore because everything is available to everyone. So I guess it does have its advantages and its disadvantages.
You performed recently with Lily Allen. Do you come across someone like that and think, we should get together, or does someone suggest her to you, as some people see a lot of you in her?
I think that, I was aware of Lily through some friends, who said that they thought she was terrific. So I was listening to her CD, and so I knew about her, and I knew that she was a fan, and that she, was covering Heart of Glass. And then I guess the opportunity arose because she had done the Today Show, and I was about to do the Today Show, so they suggested that we do it together.
Blondie was the most commercially successful band to emerge from the much-vaunted punk new wave movement of the late 70s, but one of the most collectible albums in my collection is from a 1968 folk psych rock group called Wind in the Willows, in which you were lead vocalist. Much of the music covered Roger Miller and early Everly Brothers tunes. Why didn't you write any songs for the group? Wasn't it an original material band?
It was, and I was primarily considered a backup singer in that band, so I wasn't really eligible to to write material. I never really sang any leads in that band. We did, however, make a second album, which has just vanished into the ether of time. And on that album, I tried to write a song. It was the first song that I tried writing.
Deborah, in August of 1977, Chrysalis bought your contract from Private Stock Records, and that October reissued your self-titled debut LP, Blondie, as well as releasing the second album, Plastic Letters. Private Stock was that big indie label from the mid and late 1970s, with a roster of top-name talent the likes of Frankie Valli, Samantha Sang, and Walter Murphy and the Big Apple Band. Didn't they do much along the lines of promoting the group, or were they more involved with their disco list artists?
Yes, I don't think that we were really, somehow or other, we ended up there. Don't quite understand how that happened. I guess it was our manager at the time who thought that would be a good place for us, or I guess he knew Larry Utah or something. So we ended up there, but it really was not the appropriate label for us. We were too alternative at the time, and they had no idea what to do with us. And as far as Chrysalis buying out our contract, they initiated the deal, but we ended up paying for it.
Blondie broke commercially in the UK in March of 1978 when your cover of Randy and the Rainbow's 1963 hit Denise became a top 10 hit, as did Plastic Letters, followed by a second UK top 10, I'm Always Touched by Your Presence, Dear. Let's advance to the future, Debbie. You must have been devastated by the closing of your old haunt CBGB's and the ensuing death of founder Hilly Crystal shortly after.
Yeah, it's very sad to see Hilly go. He was quite a character, and he certainly helped a lot of bands. He was very instrumental in giving a lot of bands a place to play at a time when clubs really wanted bands to play top 40s, and we had to struggle to make ends meet. Although nobody in the early days made any money at CBGB's, but we did get a lot of free beer.
A lot of folks worked for beer in those days. Isn't it ironic that it's living on now as a fashion store, Debbie?
Is that what's happening now?
It's a clothing store.
They have a store in St. Mark's Place, right?
Don't get mad. Get media. MadPod. Rare. Celebrity interviews. Indie music. MadPod.com.
Yeah. Sort of climbing up the charts and on this sort of projectile, shooting through the world of music. We were very fast-paced in those days. I mean, we worked constantly and traveled all the time and recorded, and I mean, it was a really exciting period for us.
And the follow-up single was One Way or Another, which peaked at number 24 pop starting June 2nd, 1979. Deborah, how did you, guitarists Chris Stein and Frank Infanti, keyboardist Jimmy Destry, bassist Nigel Harrison and drummer Clem Burke originally get together in the Big Apple back in 1974?
Well, Chris and I met in 74, and then we were working with a little band called the Stilettos. It was a girl trio with a trio backup band. Chris was one of the players, and then Chris and I branched off, and I think in 74, and started our own band. We wanted to go in a slightly different direction, and I think then in 1975 we placed an ad in the Village Voice for drummers, and we auditioned 50 drummers, and Clem was the last one. So we felt that he had real star quality, and so we started working with Clem. And at that point, I think we had Fred Smith in the band. He became the bass player for television later on, and so we had just basically a trio. And then Fred left to join television, and Clem said he had a friend from Bayonne who was a guitarist and a bass player, and that was Gary Valentine, and Clem brought Gary over, and Gary was so adorable and so enthusiastic, and we started working with Gary, and that's, little by little the band evolved into the personnel. We didn't really get Frank and Nigel until after, well, we had already done an album. I guess we were in the midst of recording our second or third album when we started working with them.
Now, on September 29th, 1979, Dreaming, from your fourth LP, Eat to the Beat, charted at number 27 pop, followed by The Hardest Part, released February 2nd, 1980, hitting number 84 on the Billboard Hot 100. Deborah, the group really blazed a trail in terms of crossing boundaries in music, something artists still aren't doing these days. And it's partially because of the way the business is set up. When you started, you were into new wave punk. What led to your branching out into songs like Rapture and Heart of Glass? Was Chrysalis Records really into this at first?
No. I think that sort of new wave punk idea of a style of music really came much later. And it sort of, initially, we didn't start out, none of the bands were stylistically the same, and punk music really wasn't a sound. It was about an attitude, perhaps. It was more about being alternative than anything else, and sort of not compatible with things that were being played on the radio at the time. And little by little, as the newer bands became popular and were being played on radio, then the labels punk and new wave became applied to music or styles of music. And I don't know if we ever really fit into those particular styles except through our stance, our attitude, because we were always a sort of experimental band, and we were always combining different styles, and our influences were very urban. And that's how that's how Chris and I looked at it, especially Chris, because he was the one who wanted to combine those influences. He had come back from England in the early 70s, and he was very excited about reggae, and really there had been a huge reggae outburst in the UK in the early 70s. So that's sort of how we ended up doing Tide is High. And I guess we were just sort of combining the things that were around us and all of those different feelings. At the time, it was a very a new approach. This was obviously before the internet. It was before VH1 or MTV, and